With the end of the first part of the Avengers Doomsday teaser campaign, the Russo brothers have spoken several times. So, not to answer our questions, but to add more mystery to the mystery. No, these teasers wouldn't be teasers nor trailers, they would be stories. Doomsday would have already started without us realizing it. Statements that immediately reignited the wildest theories about teasers we thought we had already completely dissected. But with possibly erased characters and that infamous timecode stirring up the internet, these statements will keep people talking. In this video, we'll closely examine what the Russo brothers' strategy is truly hiding, since nothing is left to chance in their carefully crafted communication. After weeks of conflicting information, some scoopers have obviously lost credibility, and that's no coincidence. The Russo brothers had announced it after using absolute secrecy for Endgame. They had planned a whole new strategy for Doomsday and Secret Wars. And I think it's a strategy of an information tsunami, flooding the internet with mysteries to solve, fake leaks, and false information to hide the real secrets of this movie. Yes, the Russo brothers had stated it before filming. Doomsday and Secret Wars are going to be challenging movies for the characters, but also for the viewers. And that's exactly what we need to focus on, because I think we've all collectively misinterpreted this statement, even though it's central. No, Doom isn't going to corrupt the Avengers to turn them into villains, because the Avengers are already, in a way, the villains of the Marvel Universe we know, and Avengers Doomsday. It could very well be their trial, the destruction of a myth to prepare for a rebirth, and they said it themselves, no one but Robert Downey Jr. could play the Doom of their story. Steve Rogers returning as a disruptor supports my theory. In this video, we're deconstructing everything we think we know, so we're entering the spoiler zone, the zone of all dangers. You and Kevin Buckard are your favorite theorists, favorite generic theorists, including Kevin Buckard. Robert Downey Jr. versus Steve Rogers. As I was telling you in this video, we're going to completely flip the table. It's no longer about focusing on details, wedding rings, or hidden clues shot by shot. Instead, it's time to step back, review the entire project, and understand the big picture. You know, maybe you're never better hidden than in the middle of a crowd, and this story starts right here. On July 28, 2024 Hall H panel at Comic-Con San Diego, the Russo brothers take the stage, welcomed by Kevin Feige, to announce that they will direct Avengers Secret Wars. But that's not all. They also revealed a project leading to Secret Wars, a film focused on the most important Marvel character, Victor Von Doom, through Avengers Doomsday. A dozen people dressed as Dr. Doom storm the stage. The Russo brothers announce only one person can play the role. Robert Downey Jr. emerges, takes off his mask, and says, "New mask." Task, a new mask for the same task. You know these images, we've already talked about them 1,000 times. Most importantly, they signal the start of a massive communication strategy for this movie. A strategy that centers Robert Downey Jr. and instantly sparks debates everywhere. The Russo brothers have said their Marvel story had to end with Endgame, and it felt like the whole universe closed with that film. But Kevin Feige from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, who struggled to recover after that chapter ended, answered his phone. And he called the last architects of Marvel's dominance, those who achieved what no one else had hoped for, to try to save the giant from sinking. The Russo brothers agreed, but only with their favorite screenwriter, Steve McFeely, who worked on The Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. McFeely reportedly first said no and hung up on them, but the next day he called them back and said, "Alright, okay, I have a story." A story that they say instantly inspired the entire team. Anthony Russo was clear. We didn't anticipate it, but once it appeared, we had to tell that story. Without it, no one would have returned. And that's fundamental, because it means we're not dealing with a simple comic book adaptation, but with something that no one expects. A shocking scene, not just an isolated twist, but the very heart of the film, what it's truly aiming for. And to understand that, you have to listen to what they said, not what we've extrapolated, not what we've overanalyzed frame by frame. No, their words, their actions. The Russo brothers have never made a faithful adaptation. Infinity War takes from the Infinity Gauntlet run, Thanos and the Stones, but nothing from the story itself. Endgame borrows ideas here and there, but tells its own original story, and Joe Russo summed it up perfectly. We each make our own version of the story. Comics are a vague inspiration. Taking Robert Downey Jr. to play Doom, they want to do what they've always done with their antagonist, a three-dimensional character, not just a simple villain. Often, these standout Marvel characters are the ones who truly impress audiences. The Winter Soldier, Zemo or Thanos, and Doom in the comics is already exactly like that. An ambiguous character who commits atrocities but firmly believes he's doing what's necessary, directly opposing the morally guided heroes. And the absolute symbol of that morality is Steve Rogers. Steve, he's the one who refuses the Accords, the one who refuses to sacrifice Vision, the one who refuses to abandon Bucky. Decisions that each time lead the world into total chaos. In the comics, from the start of Time Runs Out, he perfectly represents the breaking point between moral heroism and the Illuminati's desperate pragmatism. They use the Infinity Gauntlet to stop an incursion, but the gauntlet implodes. The stones are destroyed and lost, so there is no longer a clean solution for the next incursion. Only one option remains: destroy the other Earth, but Captain refuses, unwilling to kill innocents to save his own. The leaders of the heroes knew this would happen and had a very specific protocol. Strange erases memories and all traces of the Illuminati, their decisions, and this harsh truth, which will come back to bite him later. And the Russo said it very recently in an interview for Empire. They can't imagine this story without Steve Rogers. His role is central, his story is personal to them, and his return is tied to the very nature of what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has always been. They're the ones who ended his arc perfectly in 2019. They clarify his return, doesn't change that. Endgame remains the end of one book, Doomsday opens another. According to them, the multiversal conflict requires the historical figure of the Avengers. But be careful, nothing indicates the return of Clint, Natasha, or even Hulk, who has already said he won't be in the movie. What comes back are the three pillars. The constant trio of Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., Steve Rogers, and Thor. Three characters whose explosive dynamic in Avengers 1, according to their own words, forms the DNA of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's where many people are mistaken. Doomsday is not a future, this 5 is not a direct sequel to Endgame. Endgame closes a saga, Doomsday opens a new cycle. They were often asked, how do you top Infinity War and Endgame? How do you follow up after Thanos, now seen as one of pop culture's greatest villains? And their answer is clear. They didn't come back for escalation, they came back to surprise, to create a unique cinematic experience, one that is emotionally equal to, or even greater than, Infinity War and Endgame. Forget the idea of the Avengers losing a fight and returning for revenge in the next movie. Robert Downey Jr. won't return just to play Tony Stark again. Well, not narratively anyway, but rather in a more meta way. An actor with great range used to unsettle and shock audiences, much like the Russo brothers did in Civil War. That's likely why they won't tell us why Doom looks like Stark. Not right away, at least not in this movie, as I mentioned earlier. The Russo brothers prefer complex antagonists, characters who believe they're right, have doubts, suffer, and go all in, even at great personal cost. Doom fits that perfectly. Thanos uses brute force, Zemo is a broken ideologue, and Bucky acts unwillingly. Doom is all of that at once and much more, and the movie will use all these facets to lead to a disturbing conclusion. The problem isn't Doom, the problem is the Avengers, and it always has been. The figure of the hero is a plague for this world, and this movie will be their trial, a demonstration of their inevitable downfall caused by themselves. An idea seeded long ago by Ultron, Zemo, Vision, and Stark himself. New mask, same task. No, Doom won't win. Everyone loses. This is the end of everything. When the Russos say Doomsday has started, it's not just marketing. It's because the collapse has been happening for years and we've always believed we were on the right side. Before continuing this analysis, let's revisit their communication strategy one last time, since that's where the key lies, the theory of noise. At first, I thought there would be more, but only these 4 teasers were released before the Super Bowl trailer. The first phase ended with the Russo brothers announcing 1 billion views and noting the story was just beginning. Exactly as they did a few days ago with the fourth teaser for the Black Panthers, accompanied by these words. What you have watched over the past 4 weeks are not teasers or trailers, but stories. They are clues. Watch for Doomsday starts as they emphasize their message on the Empire podcast from January 16. John Russo says there, each of these trailers contains narrative information. All of this is part of a bigger story. So yes, I would say that Doomsday has already started for you. We're clearly dealing with a sneaky, deliberate marketing concept designed to constantly fuel discussion among fans. But in my opinion, something else is going on. And to understand it, once again, you have to take a step back. On March 26th, Marvel announced most of the film's cast during the Chair live stream, then went silent. Silence until November 9th when filming wrapped, and that famous ultra-zoomed photo of Reed Richards' board, which even today remains a mystery. But it was on September 30th that they did it again with a new photo from the set, published almost exactly 6 years after the one that hid the title of Avengers $4 Endgame. Despite many wild theories, no one has uncovered the true secret of this photo, making it a perfect 2 for 2. Let's move on. The main marketing campaign starts a year before the film's release, with Marvel releasing 4 teasers over 4 weeks. These teasers are packed with clues we've already discussed in this video, and with more time, we might discover even more. Anyway, that's not the point. Let's talk about what's really made headlines recently. Every teaser ends with a countdown, and we always notice this odd detail. A glitch occurs during the transition from the release date to the countdown, revealing a code. A small detail, but enough to make the internet go wild again. The leading theory is that these codes are time codes for key scenes in Endgame. Actually, we're just talking about lives, the 25 movie minutes that all end the same way. Yes, the Avengers will do a time heist. We're back to what I discussed in my previous video, confirmation bias. When we have a theory in mind, we tend to cling to anything that can reinforce it. The problem is, we often forget everything that could disprove it. So yes, the first connection between Steve's return and the old man's speech works really well. The second one with Loki and Thor, why not? But the third one is starting to stretch things a bit. When the fourth one becomes downright shaky? Confirmation bias? Which doesn't mean these teasers don't tell us anything, on the contrary, they tell a story. Steve's return as the central element of the multiversal crisis. Thor struggles to find the strength to overcome the catastrophe. An X-Men universe already devastated by long ago consequences. And finally, heroes gather to fix what can no longer be fixed. Yes, this tells a Doomsday story, Avengers causing the world's end due to their pride. An ending that starts Endgames, and the movie will only narrate its inevitable conclusion. But when you take a purely pragmatic approach, you realize something very simple. The glitch is just a mix between the date and the countdown numbers. And what really changes is only the day. That's the only constant. And that's where, personally, I had a realization. But what if, in reality, the Russos weren't playing with us to hide clues, but on the contrary, to make sure we knew absolutely nothing about the movie we're about to discover? This deliberately indecipherable clue isn't the first attempt. The photo from the set is Reed Richards' board. They've already confused some of my colleagues just like me. So why make riddles if you don't want fans to find out what you're planning? As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the Russo brothers are known for their absolute paranoia regarding leaks. And today, Marvel has massive experience in this area. With more scoopers, leakers, and followers, the franchise is now one of Hollywood's most secure. Despite the surveillance, we've recently been overwhelmed with conflicting information. Leaks are everywhere, with questionable scoops and announcements that contradict each other weekly. And that's where it gets interesting, because for some time now, the most influential scoopers have seen their credibility drop drastically, and even the most reliable ones have taken a hit. Why? Their sources are unreliable, or information is no longer circulating properly. And above all, they were wrong, they got fooled recently, especially in the Sadie Singh Kashatra case. Information that was validated by everyone, spread everywhere, except here, obviously Tim Jingray, and which turned out to be completely fake, a false lead. A scheme created on set to trap the scoopers and identify their moles. A general crisis of trust. That says a lot about Marvel's new strategy. Back during Infinity War and Endgame, the Russos were already throwing people off the scent. Fake crypts, shooting unnecessary scenes, nobody really knew the ending, at least until a week before the release when everything leaked. Today, their approach is different. Absolute secrecy is no longer possible. Now AI and social media are everywhere. Fake news, leaks, and rumors are more common than ever, which benefits Marvel. No need to control or strike, just let the internet drown itself. And the Russo brothers are playing exactly on that by releasing riddles, escape games with no solution, deliberately unsolvable clues. They offer the internet a huge playground while they move forward calmly, fully controlling the narrative. What I'm trying to tell you here is that to understand what's coming, it's no longer enough to just pay attention. You really have to know how to read between the lines. The Avengers trial. Now that the groundwork is set, let's get to the main points. Let's revisit what the Russos said before filming about why they really returned. Everything centers on a bold idea from Steve McFeely, one that rivals Infinity War and Endgame, not in scale, but in narrative concept. Even so, rest assured, John Campea, who claims to have read the script, explains that Doomsday will also be the movie with the most mind-blowing action ever seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're not sacrificing the spectacle, but let's return to the story. To work, it needed two fundamental things: that Robert Downey Jr. plays Victor Von Doom, and that Steve Rogers comes out of his golden retirement. Endgame was an ending. Doomsday leads to a renewal. What if I told you Doomsday is really the Avengers story, not Doom's? Similar to Loki, Season 1 wasn't about the multiverse, but rather an exploration of Loki's character. Doomsday would completely reinterpret the Avengers story from an outsider's perspective. A cold, pragmatic, external perspective that systematically dismantles the heroic image we've built over 15 years, turning Doomsday into the trial of the Avengers and leading to one that will serve as their reconstruction, redemption, and the founding act of a new heroism. That's a lot to take in, so let's break it down. The Russos confirm it. Doomsday has already begun, and in reality, the re-release of Endgame and the first teaser focused on Steve show us something very clear. It all starts right there. After Civil War, the Avengers split up, they lose against Thanos, and then decide to play with time to fix their mistake. They're warned that altering the past will have dire consequences. But they do it anyway and their plan fails again. Loki escapes with the Tesseract, creating a new timeline branch that will later be erased by the Time Variance Authority. This timeline no longer exists, it has been annihilated, so no matter what happens, Steve can never return exactly to that precise moment since this timeline no longer exists and these events are tolerated by the Time Variance Authority. Who needs this Loki to restart the cycle of the multiversal war and therefore its programmed collapse? In short, everything we've seen was created by He Who Remains, the dictator of the multiverse who may have shaped the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Endgame is actually not a happy ending at all, it's the founding act of disaster, the beginning of chaos. Knowing each Avengers movie follows from the last, it's clear outsiders would blame the Avengers for the situation. Captain knew staying in the past would cause more chaos, but did it anyway. Now, let's discuss Tony. For years, I supported Captain. But looking back, you have to admit one thing. Tony was always aware that the Avengers were a problem. In Age of Ultron, he tries to create an army of robots to replace them. It fails, Ultron is born and Sokovia is destroyed. He then supports the idea of oversight. That fails too. Civil War and division follow. When the Cabal attacks, he tracks them, sacrifices himself again, and still loses. He only decides enough is enough after returning, agreeing to let go and step back. But once again, Captain can't accept fate and brings him out of retirement. Because Tony knows that without him, the Avengers will mess things up again, put his family in danger, and probably the rest of the world too. Thanos returns from the past, and Tony sacrifices himself to save the world. In reality, Tony always knew that the Avengers were a problem. He tried to leave, control, and supervise them. His morals always made him compromise, even risking his life. Now, if we assume Doom and Tony share the same core, despite different histories. Victor Von Doom serves as a moral mirror to Tony's struggle. Remember, new mask, same task. Doom feels no emotional connection to the Avengers of 616 but has likely suffered from their actions. The multiverse's collapse nearly destroyed his world, as Doomsday will reveal the crisis's end, leaving just 3 or 4 worlds. 616 is the X-Men universe, 828 is for the Fantastic Four, and 838 may appear in Multiverse of Madness. But, as I explained to you in my previous video, Doom is not a simplistic villain, and he will be even less so with the Russo brothers. From his point of view, the Avengers are simply responsible for this crisis. So Doomsday isn't an attack but a trial, completely reinterpreting what the Avengers represent. A perspective that proves Zemo, Ultron, maybe even Thanos, and therefore Doom, right? They were pawns of He Who Remains, and now they have to pay the price. In the spoiler room, we discussed how Doom might be introduced as a cunning manipulator and folier. A direct threat. Probably none of the three. The Russo said it. They will be inspired by Jonathan Hickman, of course, but also by Secret Wars 1984. A story where Doom tries to warn everyone about the real source of the problem, in this case, the Beyonders, and where, obviously, no one listens to him. So I think Doom won't arrive as a tyrant or as a savior. He will arrive as a force of fate, a messenger of hunger, a cold truth. He'll be rejected again, leading him to carry out his plan. A plan absolutely unstoppable by the Avengers, who, from the very beginning of the movie, will have actually already lost, and you can see it that way. Doom would have the same mission as Tony, but without his moral restraints. Tony sacrificed himself to fix the Avengers' mistakes, but Doom is willing to risk the universe to save it from the Avengers. That's where the myth unravels. To push this deconstruction even further, the movie will use the figure of Steve Rogers. Steve represents morality without pragmatism, the absolute ideal, no matter the cost. His Age of Ultron line, "We're going to lose, but we'll lose together," captures that perfectly. It makes absolutely no sense to a mind like Tony's or Doom's, and I think Doom will go after Steve. For that reason, he is the ultimate moral check against Doom. Steve becomes the Avengers' biggest weakness. He's not following the same rules anymore. A sly move, but very effective, and that's our goal. The nostalgia here goes beyond fan service. It's used to be destroyed, to force self-reflection, to impose humility, and that's probably what will give real weight to his returns. To finish, this thought came to me as I was thinking back to one of my theories from 2025. I thought Doom would return the Avengers as their worst, corrupted multiversal versions, a cabal of dark Avengers. But now I tell myself that it was too simple, because in reality Doom doesn't need that. The Avengers are already guilty. He just needs to confront them with their demons and mistakes, making us see them differently. So, Doomsday isn't just fan service, it's an autopsy. Endgame is the end of the myth, Doomsday is the trial. And Secret Wars will be the redemption, and I actually think that Secret Wars will be much more focused on Doom and his story. A medieval world where everyone starts out equal and where the heroes will have to. And here, I can really see them fighting their evil versions, a sort of face-off with what Doom has revealed. A confrontation that forces them to prove they were right, but also that they're worth much more, allowing for a true rebirth, a reset that has a totally meta meaning. The Marvel Universe could be reborn by completely resetting its heroes and their concepts. The Avengers can't return to their old selves, and responsibility will be shared more broadly. We, Marvel, and everyone else will learn from past mistakes, allowing this new universe to be reborn as a whole. And in fact, this renewal has already begun with First Step, which clearly tells us that we are taking our first steps into this new universe. Brand new day with Spider-Man, who will also begin this transformation. On his side, Doomsday with the trial, as we've been saying all along, and finally, Secret Wars with the rebirth. This video was dense and complex, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. I think it's important to understand the stakes involved. Nothing is simple in this film, not in the campaign, the Russo brothers' strategy, or Marvel. Nothing will be simple in this Doom played by Robert Downey. Junior, I think this film will amaze us more than any Marvel movie before, according to the Russo brothers on their podcast. People want to be surprised, so forget absolutely everything you've seen in the past. The storytelling won't resemble Infinity War. This film will defy fan expectations and surprise everyone. Well, maybe not now. Sorry if I guessed right. See you soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, friends. See you next week, same day and time. Stay curious. That's the secret to happiness. Bye.